the nature of the stories also, because like I'm thinking, for example, of Nadia Akbar's Good Mercury, which was fantastic. I don't know why people are not talking about it more, because it was a fantastic piece of writing. Or even Faika Mansab's book. You know, these are urban stories, and they are telling the story of women that just it's just different. I think that a contemporary kind of take on writing women is different, and I think that a lot of writers don't have that kind of rural background, and also don't want to write about it that much. Like I'm thinking of Moni Mohsin's the return to innocence.
Yes, the end of innocence.
End of innocence. Yes. No, because she has a rural background or access to that. I mean, I feel like it felt like an authentic story to tell. But me, for example, who has, no feudal background, that's not the story I would find myself telling, for example. So I think it's a subset
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Contemporary storytelling.
Avis, going to your book, In the Company of Strangers, you've written about urban Lahore, but I also know that you have rural roots. Do you feel that there's a disconnect between how the rural woman is and the urban woman is, or do you find that they both suffer equally?
Where you're asking very difficult questions. वैसे I don't नहीं लेकिन it's a very good question actually. I don't think that they're both the same, the rural and urban women. I think they both go through different troubles. Whereas in rural Pakistan, mainly the problem that women face is that they're not allowed to go out, or they don't have access to clean water at times, or they don't have access to basic necessities sometimes. Whereas in urban Lahore, basic necessities more or less cover ho jati hain, but then the issue is more existential, I think, when it comes to urban Lahore. And that's what I tried to show in the Company of Strangers as well, that most of the people of Pakistan, of Lahore's elite, they all had existential crises going on. So I think that's the main difference.
Absolutely. I mean, I find that it was Aisha Bakar's book, Beyond the Fields, in where there's a scene, and I would strongly recommend that you guys read this book as well, where there's a scene where, the main character leaves her village to come to the urban area to escape from her sort of, obstacles in her way. And yet when she gets to Lahore and she enters this beautiful house, and the madam of the house is this beautiful privileged lady, and she finds that she's also trapped. The house is like a gilded cage for her. Mina, would you agree with that kind of representation of both rural and urban?
Well, yes, in many ways. And I think that, but what I sort of grapple with, and I'm working on a longer piece myself, and it's basically just all women, and there just happen to be no men.
Lovely.
It just happened. Yeah. But it is something I'm sort of thinking about, is that when it comes to women, somehow the lens invariably turns to suffering. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, because on the one hand, there women that exist in patriarchies, there's a lot of stuff that you have to deal with, and that is undeniable. So whether it's
absolutely,
like whether it's not getting permission to leave the house, or not having access to healthcare, or even as a richer woman then being sort of trapped by other kind of social mores, like Mona is in The Company of Strangers. Women are oppressed in many different ways. It's just that the trappings change, but the essence of it remains. But at the same time, I'm thinking about, the stories, like, for example, Diksha Basu, who wrote Destiny Wedding. Like, where are the fun stories? Like, where are the funny stories? Where are the sort of, like Butterfly, for example, again, going back to Moni Mohsin. And Butterfly, I think one reason why Butterfly does so well is that sometimes, girls just want to have fun too. So as clearly you can see, I'm in a sort of real back and forth about, there's so many different stories to tell, but sort of how does one find that balance in telling them,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Abbas, how easy is it for you as a male writer to imagine how a female would react? I've always been curious about this.
Yeah, me too.
I think some of it is due to observation. ये मैं सबको बताता भी हूँ कि as a person who moves around in the same society, I had the opportunity to look closely at how women react to certain things. So that's what when I was doing this article with Khaleej Times, they asked me the same thing. I was like, people are not that good at hiding their feelings and emotions as they think they are. So it's always very easy to see what's going on behind the surface.
Yes.
So that's what I used. I used all my जो मैंने detective work किया था, so I used all that.
Abbas, you say that I'm asking the dangerous and hard questions. You're the dangerous man here. But Mina, I agree with you. Like, where are the fun stories? Now, you do stand up, and I did stand up, and I think one of the major reasons was that we wanted to change the narrative of how people viewed desi mothers. There we were with like our tummy pouches out. Exactly. Kebab,
Hi, I'm
chai, and
here.
everything.
Oh, lipstick on. Fantastic.
Bilkul. And I find that it's interesting that you say that you're working on a longer piece which has female characters. In my case, I've been working on something which actually has all male characters, because I feel that if we are to change how writers portray women, we need to sort of, hold something up to the men and say, this is what we think of you guys as well. This is how we see you. Would you consider that a strategy to change representation in literature?
I think that it sounds very exciting. I also think it would be quite challenging because on many levels, writing what like for me, writing women is interesting and it's easier, and I don't feel like I'm presuming in any way because I'm like, okay, these are my people. But I don't see why it should be any different for writing a male character. Why on earth not? Yeah, and I think you're right. It's sort of like the Empire Writes Back kind of thing.
Empire
Patriarchy.
Writes Back with red lipstick in hand. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Avis, do you think that there is no difference between male or female characters? Like, at the end of the day, it's all about human reaction. I mean, that's how at Kaarvan we feel that if women are to make progress, then we need to work with the men as well. Because at the end of the day, everyone wants to do well in life. Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to have nice things and be seen in a nice way. So do you think that it comes down to just how humans would react overall to any given situation? Good.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Bad,
Yeah,
evil,
at the end of the day, it's
good.
all about human emotion. So emotion is the same everywhere, no matter if you're a man or a woman. I think uh, that's what I feel. You're absolutely right. You hit the nail right ahead by saying it's at the end of the day, it should be about human experience. Rather than just, and that's why I felt it. I think it was easy for me to write about women as well, because I basically wrote about human emotion, not
Yes.
thinking whether it's for men or for women. So yeah.
Mina, do you feel that it's about human reaction?
Yes, it is. Ideally, though, I think in an ideal
Ideally.
world, that's what it
Yeah.
would be. Because there's also,
Yeah.
and again, it becomes a kind of Twitter joke as well, but it comes from truths where a lot of men have historically written women in such a fantasized way. That it almost becomes a kind of joke. It's like, it's like how men want to see women and everyone is like beautiful and the sunlight hits you like this and
Yes.
I
Pick
naturally
a
is highlighted
pool.
in preventive ways.
Yeah.
So there is that, which I don't know, maybe something like, if you're writing something with like all men in it, maybe that's an interesting way to counter that representation.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned that women are portrayed in a certain way. If we were to look at Manto's writings, for example, that's a completely different dimension of women representation altogether, right?
Yes, absolutely. But there I feel like, I think then again, that's why I feel like Manto Sahib's work resonates so well, because that for me is the closest we get to human experience. Because he's there to tell a story and it's as direct as possible and just hits you in the face with it. So I don't think,
Nice.
at least I don't get the feeling there that he's really kind of differentiating between, औरतों का हुस्न और मर्द की मर्दानगी. It's more about stuff that's
Yeah.
happening.
Avais, how do you feel about Manto's representation of female characters?
Once again, man, thoda sa, I'm a bit, it's a bit quick, but I haven't read Manto yet.
But I mean, don't worry, you'll
मेरे
catch
पास
up.
है, I bought his book, वो जो है, it's called My Name is Radha by Manto, so I'm planning on reading that.
Oh, absolutely. But then, Avais, how did you learn about how to, because men and women react differently to situations. And of course, like you said, you observed a lot. And that's how you started weaving your narrative. But in this other book that you're writing, where it starts off in such a dramatic manner, and I don't want to give it away, but I had the privilege of taking a sneak peek at it, and I was blown away by the emotions that you've just, it was just raw power. How did you come up with that? I would never have been able to write like that, to be honest, to convey such strong emotions.
Thank you so much, Meher. Means a lot coming from you, obviously. Lekin, the thing about this novel is that within the Company of Strangers, mostly it was based on observation and my personal experience of what I saw and everything. But for this one, obviously, I don't have any experience, that much experience with rural Pakistan. I don't know how it works. So for this, I had to do a lot of interviews. So I asked people at my house staff and the people they knew back in Multan and Khanewal and all of that, the South Punjab Valley belt. So I did a lot of interviews. I even went there to Multan to do these interviews, and that's the stories they told and the emotions you could see that on their faces when they were telling you these stories. It wasn't hard to after that it wasn't hard to write because I could picture that face in my mind when I was writing that, because the pain and the torture, it's apparent on their faces what they've gone through. So I think that really helped, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to. I don't really have that much experience. So I'm very glad that
Absolutely.
I've written it in a way that has resonated with you, and I'm sure hopefully it will resonate with others.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's certainly something that has still stayed with me to date. Mina, Avais mentions experience. So do you think experience is something that can give an insight into how, because often there's a disjoint between how somebody is and how you might write about them, as in your interpretation of who they are and what they are, right?
But isn't that what characterization is then? Because you can't experience everything, and I think that's where research is very important to a writer. And I think that you want to tell a story, and research is one of those tools that helps you tell it in an authentic way, because like Awais said, you can't experience everything for yourself, and one experience is so different from another. So I think one shouldn't feel nervous about authenticity just because you don't come from a certain background. You can research, you can read, you can interview people, you can talk to them. आप एक माहौल बना सकते हैं. That's where the powers of the imagination come in.
Absolutely. Mina, I have to ask, who's your favorite female character from literature or characters?
Oh gosh,
Female.
ये बड़ा खौफनाक सवाल.
हाय सारे मेरे सवालात कोई खौफनाक से हो रहे हैं. Avais, आप ही सोचो.
My brain is like racing. Well,
I'm looking at my books of who's my favorite.
Rachel, from my cousin Rachel, is I think one of the women who's just really stayed with me. I also read these fantasy series when I was a kiddo, and they featured this girl called Alana. And I thought she was great because she's basically a girl who wants to, she becomes like a magic knight. She disguises herself as a boy and then like goes off to become a magic wizard knight, which was amazing. and hey,
Who's yours? 1 minute thinks of someone else.
I know, I'm like, oh, there's so many.
I really liked मैंने जब वो Gondal पढ़ी feel like Amy Dunn. I think she's a fantastic character. I was like, I was totally rooting for her, contrary to popular opinion. Yeah, and secondly, I really liked Rebecca in Rebecca's novel. So I thought that she was a very, I mean, she was a bit of a villain, but she was a very strong character. I think.
No, she was Daphne. Really, like
amazing.
That's the thing.
I wish Rebecca I could read again without knowing kya hona hai aage.
I know, like I think the people who haven't read certain books, because I'm like, hey, you're going to have such the shock of your life, and it's going to be amazing.
Absolutely. I often find, I mean, I love the fact that you brought Rebecca up, because I often find that women who have that, our earliest female characters are probably from cartoon. Har kisi ne Cinderella to dekhi hogi at some point or wanted to be. Right, so that's the first indication of a female character. And I don't know why, but I remember as a child being completely impressed by, and please, this is no representation, animal rights. I'm all for them, okay, but completely in love with Cruella de Vil.
I was very impressed with George from the Famous Five. I thought that she was like so cool. Like here's this girl whose name is so like Auntie Wala, so she reinvents herself as George, and she has this cool dog, and she was so feisty, and I thought that George was like.
I remember now that you mention her, I remember George. Yeah, she was one of the best, one of my favorite characters too.
I loved her, gender bending George.
Yes. Absolutely. But
Cruella de Vil had a certain
I think that
stylishness.
Later on in years, I sort of I think Cruella de Vil, I just found her fabulous in the sense that here she was coming in, walking to someone's house, with this air of assertiveness, like, I'm here, thank you, serve me very well. Whereas, we were always told, ki kisi ke ghar jaake chup karke baith jana hai, and just smile. I think my first indication of that. And then, of course, Miss Havisham, my all-time favorite.
Oh, yes.
Love it.
Really.
Amazing.
And of course, I don't know if you guys have read Bapsi Sidhwa's The Crow Eaters, Gerbano, the mom. I mean, what I loved was how Bapsi Sidhwa really captured elements of her personality. When they go to England and she decides to call out Mary, and she doesn't say Mary, she goes, Mary. And he was like, I could so see myself doing that as an old lady.
अब तो मैं पढ़ूंगा Crow Eaters because you love
it. Gerbano is just like whack.
There's what you've read Faika's book as well, Faika Mansab's book, which is how did you feel about the representation of female characters in that compared to what you had written? Because Faika targets a different audience altogether. Her characters are different. Was that something of new experience as well?
Oh yeah, I often tell her this. Okay, your book, I read it in like 2 days because it was so good.
Wow.
And it was such a breath of fresh air because I was so tired of reading about the impoverished woman, terrorism, and all that stuff. I was very tired, and so I never read. I was.
Yeah,
exactly. I इतना पढ़ी नहीं था Pakistani literature because of that. So when I read her book, at that time I didn't know her well. I remember messaging her afterwards. I'm totally enthralled of your book, and I finished it in like 2 days, and I've never done that before with a Pakistani book. And I think she does such a great job of showcasing every of showcasing women at every rung of society.
Yeah.
I don't know how she did it, but she did it really, really well. And it's no wonder that the book has picked up by a film producer, because it really does deserve. It has that depth in it. The characters have that depth that every writer wish that their characters could have.
Of course.
That's, I think,
Mina,
what
what were
makes
your
her
thoughts on the
work
type of
stand out.
characters that Faika had picked out? Do you feel that she showed a different side of
I enjoyed it
Absolutely, she did.
tremendously, and it was one of
female
those books that,
desire?
and sorry, did I miss something? Okay. No, I enjoyed Faika's book tremendously, and I read it on a plane. So the whole flight, I was just like, brrr, and I put it down when we were landing, and I was just like, wow. It's one of those books that really, I think, gets under your skin, and I think that her characterization is so empathetic and human and warm, and there's so much love for those characters, even though, as a writer, you have to let terrible things happen to them, and terrible things do happen to them. But I thought that it was
Absolutely.
really beautifully balanced book, and I really enjoyed it. I think it is very special indeed. I also really enjoyed Rafina by Shandana Minhas. I thought that was great. It's so feisty. It's so
We have some really
funny.
talented authors in Pakistan, especially female authors. Very, very talented.
Yeah, Rafina was great.
Doing you up.
Girls just want to have fun. There's also Lali's anthology of Afghanistan, which was all about interpreting Jane Austen in a local way, in a Desi way. Let's manage to read Afghanistan.
And I think that this is also where women's writing, and when women write about women in a kind of with joy, it often gets sidelined as chick lit. And I think that that's also really frustrating, because just because it's written by women about women who are not crying all the time, it doesn't mean it's chick lit. It still has something to say, and it's still meaningful, and it still kind of has depth. And I think that that's also something that reading culture around women's writing needs to change as well in that respect.
Absolutely. And this description of female authors writing chick lit.
Internet problems.
Yeah. So, Wes.
मैं तो गायब हो गई और आपस में बातें करें.
अब आपस में करेंगे. It's still live streaming to Facebook. So, tell me about your second book.
Well, it's let's see क्या होता है. It's on session to publishers in the UK and in the US. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. It's about honoring in Pakistan, but it's a very different story, because it's told from the perspective of both the girl and her father. So it's a little different.
Potential for interest. And I think that the father's perspective maybe is one that we don't see that often, because they're usually the villain. So you're like, bad Abu, go off.
Yeah.
Head, are you back?
Mayor is back.
Yes, the boss is back. Yes, who's back?
It's terrible.
Okay, Mayor,
this is what happens when you live in the poor side of town.
You know what I do is I turn on my 4G, I turn on the hotspot. उससे फिर laptop को भी मैं connect कर देता हूँ. That way, Wi-Fi is very unpredictable in Pakistan.
मैं कोशिश करती हूँ अपना hotspot on करने का, as wrong as it sounds.
You're like, the only hotspot I recognize.
You know what?
Oh yeah. वो तो that's the classic. Brownie and vanilla. totally.
Yes, Abbas, you must so, brother. Yes, yes.
Maybe I'm the banana chocolate blitz person. So even if a page phatra hoga, and that's the only thing I'm willing to eat.
Seriously.
Chalo,
Amazing,
Hotspot, we
amazing.
missed you.
मैं गाड़ी ला रही हूँ,
Turned into a hotspot fan club now.
मास्क पहनो, आलू
Yes, it has. It has indeed. Absolutely. Now, Abbas, what are you hoping for?
I didn't get the question. Right?
What are you hoping that will change in Pakistani literature over time? Are you hoping that characters will be more nuanced, more developed, storylines will be more varied? Are you looking for more authors to join in? What is it that you want?
I want more genre fiction to come out of Pakistan. That is what that is my hope. I want to see fantasy. I want to see some science fiction. I want to see more romance come out of Pakistan. I mean, the only science fiction book that I've read from Pakistan is by Sidra Sheikh. उसके अलावा बहुत कम. So I really want to see. I mean, हम लोग Americans or UK लोगों की we read their fantasy and we read their science fiction and we enjoy what we read horror. But why in Pakistan? Why can't we write the same thing here in Pakistan? So I'm really hoping that in future this changes, and I think it can only change if the publishing industry is stronger and to take risks in Pakistan. So yeah.
Absolutely. Mina, same question for you. What do you hope should change?
So many wishes, huh? Well, one thing that I wish is that I wish for the publishing scenario situation to grow and get stronger and flourish, because there are so many stories out there, but if there's nobody to provide the vehicle for that, where do you go with it? The second aspect of that wish is editing, because a lot of people are talented, but a lot of people need a firm editing hand, and you don't have editors here. And so many people have written to me asking, okay, I've written a thing, what do I do now? And I'm like, you need an editor. Everybody needs an editor. T.S. Eliot had Ezra Pound editing his work. If it wasn't for Pound, it would have been like 1,000 pages long, which it was originally. So yeah, and I think the third thing,
absolutely.
And I think the third thing is to just kind of try and be as authentic as possible. Like, I see a lot of young people who are very enthusiastic about writing, but there's this kind of notion in their head where it's like, like holding a skull, alas, poor Yorick. Like, no, it doesn't have to be Yorick. You put the skull aside. Tell your story. Every story counts. There's no such thing as a bhari, meaningful story and a silly story. All of them are important. So we don't have to always be suffering. बम नहीं हर वक्त फटने की जरूरत कभी होती है, हर वक्त नहीं होती. It's okay. Sometimes your story got the walls.
बिल्कुल, हमारी कहानियां अब बदल चुकी हैं, हमारे लोग बदल चुके हैं, चाहे मर्द हो चाहे औरत हो. मैं समझती हूँ कि जो हर एरा के साथ पाकिस्तानी जो कौम है हर जनरेशन के साथ बदलते आ रहे हैं, एंड जब तक आप उनकी कहानियां नहीं लिखेंगे, जब तक आप उनकी जिंदगियों को आवाज नहीं देंगे, तो मैं नहीं समझ सकती कि कोई भी मुल्क बदल सकता है. And I think that's why there's always a lot of fear of the written word, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, कि आप एक चीज को document कर रहे हैं तो पता नहीं अगली नस्लें पढ़ के क्या सोचेंगी, क्या देखेंगी, and you just like, यार करन दो, काम करन दो.
They will find out, they will find out.
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
good. उनका हक है.
Listen to stories. My mother, my grandmothers used to tell me about, women in the rural village, and they were very different to, say, the portrayal that we used to see on PTV dramas. उस ज़माने में PTV और STN होता था, या फिल्मों में. It was really different. It was like you said, we need authenticity. And Abbas, you're absolutely spot on. जब तक different genres नहीं आएंगे, we cannot see different characters coming to the fore. we'll see those same old things, and that's why, unfortunately, Pakistani authors don't make very much progress.
But in terms of
Mina,
genre, it's really
when
exciting.
can we expect it? No, go on. Go ahead.
I'm just saying that in terms of genre, like the Salam Award, it's very exciting. They've got a bunch of the winners writing on their website. Fantastic. You know, Usman Malik writes these short stories. And really, like Awais is right. When you read brown genre, it really hits different. You're like, Anarkali mein Tufan. You know, it's just wonderful.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's very
Awais, do you think you'll continue writing fiction?
I think, yeah, because I don't really know how to write anything other than fiction. So I think it will be fiction hi chalegi. But I really do want to write a non-fiction book someday, hopefully. Yeah, once I'll take some courses for it or kuch dekhunga, phir hi dekh sakta.
yeah. And
But
this, again,
until that, it's going to be
non-fiction coming out of Pakistan, like wonderful.
absolutely.
Lots of spaces. This is why I feel like there's so many opportunities for us.
Well, hopefully there'll be some good nonfiction coming soon if things ever work out. Optimistic, because this new generation of writers, I feel that they're very sensitive to how people are being portrayed and how people react, and I feel that they want to sort of show different sides of Pakistani characters, particularly female ones, interestingly.
Yeah, because they're there, and why not?
Why not? Yeah. Awais, you also teach writing. When you have clients who come to you to write, do you see that do you find that they want to express more than what the usual characters may be, and yet they come to you in the hope of sort of expressing something else?
Yes, there is so much talent in Pakistan. जब भी मेरी creative writing का course होता है ना, I'm totally bowled over by the talent because most of those people are better writers than I am. So I'm like, why am I even teaching you? So, but the one thing that I've seen, especially in younger writers, especially the children, is that when they do write, they write about Western characters. उनका जो character होगा ना, John होगा या Jane होगी, I wish that they would write out Pakistani characters, regional characters, जैसे Ali हो गया, Hassan हो गया, मतलब write about them, उनके experiences के बारे में. So that is something I try to tell them that, it might be good to explore your own experiences.
But वही बात है ना, तेरे शर्म आती है. Like, wow, really?
Exactly.
They feel like in some level it's kind of painful to write about Ali ने आम खाया और फिर वो walls वाले के पीछे भागा और फिर कीचड़ में गिर गया. They feel like it's not it's not a worthy story. Like वो ठोस कहानी नहीं होगी है. हालांकि I find it really charming, that kind of story.
So yeah, I think that would you write the shame, embarrassment,
John and Jane.
कैसे लिखेंगे उसके बारे में. But that rings more true. Like वो बहुत पीछे भागने वाला. I think that's more interesting than reading about someone in London. Yeah.
Yeah.
Over to you.
We're politely like, Acha.
No. I mean, why do you think, Mina, that there's this obsession with John and Jane? Do you think it's a post-colonial thing that we can't really go and look at a Zainab or an Akbar?
It is, and more than post-colonial, because I think now we are enough generations removed from that experience. I feel like our kind of national obsession with Angrezi Zuban is very much to blame also, because a lot of kids don't read in Urdu. A lot of kids don't speak Urdu at home or their mother tongue, whichever it is. Because I know that you guys speak Saraiki, for example. So I think that when you hear stories in your own language and in mother tongues and in whatever it is you speak at home that is not English, basically, that kind of develops your sensibility in a different way. But at school, it's so different. You have your gain readers and Oxford University Press, and then you go home and your daddy's telling you, Sarkate ki kahani. Somehow there's a kind of gap their imaginative gap, which I think that's in school needs to be bridged better. Because just because you're sitting a Cambridge, international exam, O levels, A levels, baccalaureate, doesn't mean कि अब आप you throw Zainab and the mangoes out of the window. No, you keep them. I think that's where teachers come in, because teachers feel, again, it's one of those things कि even teachers feel like कि नहीं आप अंग्रेजों के बारे में ही लिखो. But thing is, अंग्रेज अपने बारे में खुद लिखें. हमारा काम तो नहीं है.
I totally agree. And what you said just now, Mina, about our obsession with English. I mean, मुझे देख लो या आप लोगों को देख लो. I remember at home we never spoke English at all. लेकिन स्कूल जाके आ जाती है English. So I think parents these days need to sort of inculcate the love for local language as well. I think that's very important for future generations. So English to aa jati hai. You go to school, you learn English, but you have to have a close connection with your mother tongue as well.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, we're nearing the end now. So, any last, sorry, maybe we could do a part 2. This time we'll discuss male characters. But Aves, any last, thoughts you'd like to share? I always get this wrong. People it sounds so ominous.
Last thought.
मैं ही सोच रहा हूँ कि नहीं मेरी अभी जिंदगी अल्लाह करे आगे हो. This is not the end.
बिल्कुल नहीं
ये तो वही वाला काम है. Even you take someone to the gallows, they're like कोई आखिरी thought है तो बता दो. But no, my last thoughts are I'm so glad that people like Meher and Mina and so many others exist in Pakistan to champion writing and publishing, and I think we need people like you in our country to keep fighting for writing and publishing, and I think that's the only way we will rise, and we will get noticed by the Big Five, because that's my dream, to see the Big Five come into Pakistan and set up their offices there, because that is the way we will get proper international representation.
No, and I'm really heartened
hopefully.
by...
And then, we'll have Mina as the commissioning editor at Penguin Pakistan or something like that.
Hey.
Yes.
No, but and I think it's really heartening how, thank you, internet, how a lot of younger writers and, some slightly older ones also are all sort of coming together in this really new sense of community that is being built. And I think that because all of us are trying to stick together, I think that wonderful things can happen because, we're all kind of united for this common cause. So,
absolutely.
Friends.
Absolutely. I mean, I've often said this, that, I find that the written word is the last bastion of civilized living. And it's very necessary. People learn more from fiction than they do from non-fiction.
Or from life even.
And I feel children's education. Life, yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's very important that, in Pakistan, we cultivate this culture of reading. And I think a lot of that will have to do with representation, particularly of females. Without that, I don't see us making progress or going, publishing going forward. Thank you so very much, Mina, for joining me. And yes, you as well for joining me on Kaarvan's platform. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation.
It really was. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Aves. Bye.
Take care, you guys. Stay safe. Bye-bye.